Hey everybody, welcome back. So I've been playing D&D as a player and a DM for 2 years now, and my most ambitious endeavor was adapting a novel from a series of books into an entire campaign. I know that this kind of goes against common wisdom in the community, but the thing is, it's fun to adapt other fiction to your game. If a story inspires you, then no one and nothing should prevent you from using aspects of the story, or even the story itself, in your game. I used an entire book. I used the fourth novel from the Dune series, God Emperor of Dune. Most of this book is dialogue and philosophy. So how do you accomplish making a sci-fi philosophy piece into a fantasy adventure? It's simple, actually. Most of the work is done for you. The important thing is to adapt the God Emperor himself. So your setting must have a dude who rose to power by changing his form into that of a sandworm. Well, D&D has purple worms, so let's use those. Those are cool. Next, his name, let's keep Leto as a cool name. It's a little unassuming. Let's keep that he is Leto the Second because it sounds fantasy-esque. And let's keep that his form is a giant worm because all the stuff about the spice allowing you to see the past and the future, all that's cool. What we do need to keep in mind is that the players do not know his abilities, unless they are a Bene Gesserit. Yeah, you heard me right. I changed Bene Gesserit to Bene Jesuit because the word Jesuit comes from history. It's associated with religion and helps diverge a little bit from the source material while giving the players a name that they'll likely recognize. Well, if they paid attention in European history. But their order being all women who use spice and breeding programs to alter events of history, let's keep all that. And the reason why we're keeping basically everything so far is because it's not substantially different from what you might expect from a fantasy setting. Until we get to the Tleilaxu. This is where I made some significant changes. They are the premier scientists of the Empire that work on projects for Leto, but they're working on steam-powered machines like airships and trains, and even flintlock guns. This all works without changing the spirit of what the Tleilaxu are in the novels. Further, to keep in line with their genetic abilities as face dancers, that civilization is made up entirely of changelings. It's perfect. They're still going to be distrusted because they can shapeshift. The same fears that people have of the Tleilaxu in the novels, people are going to have of the Tleilaxu in my game. Lastly, the rest of the races need a place. So let's keep Chom, but call it the collective honors for the advancement of mercantilism. The elves can run this. Dwarves are miners that are deprived of education. Orcs dig up spice blows from the desert. Gnomes and halflings are farmers. Humans are advisors. And the tabaxi women are the fish speakers. All of this is a general rule, of course. Let the players go off the beaten path if they want with their backstory, and find a way to make it make sense. It's still fantasy after all, and the player's enjoyment is paramount. Without the players, you don't have a game. The last thing we need is an explanation for all of this super rigid structure, because it is pretty rigid. But that's simple. It's tyranny. Leto's goal is to be such a radical tyrant that all sentient life will remember his lessons in their bones. The rigidity is explained simply as being the shape of Leto's empire. Let the players uncover all of this slowly. Don't give them a 10-page document that, let's be honest, most of the players will not read. Let information about the world be revealed in story beats rather than text, because 1, they're more likely to remember it, and 2, it's more dramatic. Now, how do you do this? Just do it. I don't have better advice. I don't know how to really explain it, but I can give you an example. The very first thing we did was meet our characters in a tavern. That's how we started our game, like most D&D games. And while the characters are interacting, I roleplay 2 dwarves, the innkeep and a miner, talking about how the miner's mother doesn't remember who he is. The players keep doing their thing, and after a while I build on this as a dwarf, with zombie-like movement, posture, and speech, asks for food. The players continue doing their thing, and I describe the minor dwarf as getting angry. He says to the innkeep, "I'm gonna kill that damned Tleilaxu." and he goes to confront the deadpan dwarf. Now the players start to freak out as this has come to a head before their eyes, and they scramble to figure out what the dwarf's problem is. They find out that people in the town have been acting strangely. They don't remember to go to work. They don't remember family or friends or even their own name. And one of the theories is that the face dancers are invading the town. And of course, this is just speculation on the part of the townsfolk. Some of them also speculate that it's a disease. Some think that dark magic is plaguing them. And of course, this is just like the real world. People come up with all kinds of theories to explain something weird that's going on. And just like in the real world, they're usually all wrong. If this setup sounds familiar, it may be because I took the concept from Against the Cult of the Reptile God, which I did, and I put my own spin on it. As of this recording, the players are now in a Yuan-Ti temple armed with sovereign glue. Their plan? To seal Explicata Defilis in her sarcophagus with the sovereign glue. Now that's a good plan, and it's not one that I expected them to come up with. I gave them the glue on a whim, pretty much, and the paladin player realized that this can be used to seal the coffin and prevent the Naga from terrorizing another city while she's trying to restore herself to life. In my version, she's been reduced to a bone Naga, so she's trying to return herself to her former glory. So this adventure did a few things. It established the world as dangerous, for one. It showed the players that NPCs can be unreliable sources of information, and it exposed some lore about the Tleilaxu. And now, when the Tleilaxu are mentioned, I don't have to remind them what the Tleilaxu are. They remember, because they were fooled into thinking that the face dancers were responsible for the strange goings-on in this town. The other thing that gives me advantage here is this. The players have never read a Dune book, nor have they even seen the David Lynch movie. This gives me the advantage because I can use inspiration or characters from any of the books and they will never know. They will never call me on the fact that I stole all of it, because they have no clue what my creation, my adaptation, or my thievery is. That said, you can adopt a work of fiction they are familiar with too, but I would strongly advise against trying to pass it off as if you're not. They're likely to call you on it, and they'll be removed from the game. I made this mistake when I lifted the Orochimaru and Third Hokage storyline from Naruto. I have since learned that you generally have better luck if you tell the players, I have an idea for an adventure/campaign based on X. My sister is a DM for a campaign that I play in, and her pitch to us players was one sentence. I want to run a game based on Twilight Princess. This game is her favorite in the Zelda series, and it's a game that I've played through several times, and I loved it. I've loved every Zelda title I've ever played, so I was stoked. I rolled up a character and was super excited to get to play through a game that I loved in a way that, without D&D, I could only have dreamt of. And a good example of this is the chase scene. In the game, you have the Zora Prince in a wagon, and you're being chased by bandits. And it's a difficult part of the game, and it succeeds in making you feel anxious. As the wagon catches fire, the bandits catch up to you over time, and you're taking damage on top of it all. My sister had the genius idea that instead of random bandits, the two Narzugal riding nightmares are who chases us in the wagon while the Triton Prince Barbarian is pissed off and fights alongside us. That was an incredibly tense part of her game, and I never would have dared imagine that that chase scene would have wound up being one of my favorite parts of both the original game and her campaign. And she pulled it off because it was a familiar set piece with her own twist that elevated it from being a reskinned version of a Zelda game to her D&D campaign with higher stakes, rising action, and more consequences for failure. I think that this is all the advice I can give you on this topic. I hope that if you're inspired by a piece of literature or a game or a movie, that you will try putting it in your game. Just know your players and know them well enough to know whether or not you should tell them you are putting something from another piece of fiction in your game. I know I said don't do it if they know what it is, but if you think better of it and decide that it would be a cool moment for them to realize you've taken something from somewhere else, that's fine too. My experience is just that players are kind of let down when they realize it. But that's been my players and my experience, and you know your table better than I do. So with that last caveat, and now that you've been given permission from a random person on the internet, do what you want to with your game, and have fun doing it.